thank my good friend and colleague, Tomasi Blair, for having chaired the morning session and successfully concluded the consideration of CPDs for UNDP. And now I open agenda item 6, evaluation. And we will first take up the UNDP evaluation policy. Before I move any further, ladies and gentlemen, let me tell you how happy I am personally to have come to this point that we have a very good substantive discussion on the evaluation policy. Very important developments have been going on over the past year, and which have opened the way to very good, very important, very substantive discussion of the evaluation policy on its substance throughout in preparation of this regular session, and I'm sure you have attended the informal discussions on this, informal consultations on this, and now we are in a formal segment. And this independent evaluation policy, the key word is independent, will be presented by Mr. Indran Naidu, Director, Independent Evaluation Office. And it will open the way, of course, for all of us to engage in discussions with the office and with the UNDP management on the evaluation policy. So, and later on, we will have a decision to make on it, and I know there is considerable progress on the decision, the draft decision. So we are practically very close to having a very, very successful, good, productive conclusion of the consideration of the independent evaluation, which has been a process for some time and which is very close to come to its full, to its fruition. Before I go any further, now I will ask Mr. Magdi Martinez-Soliman, Assistant Administrator and Director, Bureau for Policy and Program Support, to make some introductory remarks, following which I will invite Mr. Indran Naidu, Director, Independent Evaluation Office, to introduce the actual evaluation policy. Mr. Martinez-Soliman, I invite you to make your introductory remarks. Please, you have the floor.
President Natsakanyan, distinguished members of the Executive Board, ladies and gentlemen. President, I think you have set the tone for the importance of the formal debate that will follow the presentation by Director Naidu of the draft evaluation policy before you. It is with great pleasure that we contribute to the analysis today of the revised evaluation policy of UNDP, concluding, as you have rightly said, a rich and long consultation process aimed at identifying the best architecture for the evaluation function and the most effective guiding principles and operational arrangements. We have highly benefited from the extensive engagement and exchanges with all of you, members of the Executive Board, with other member states who have volunteered their views, their opinions, their experience in the management of their own evaluations. We have benefited from such exchanges with the Board as the custodian of the evaluation policy, and enriched them with other agencies' views, as well as with the perspectives of the Joint Inspection Unit, whose review of the evaluation function in the UN system across the board came right at the time of our policy formulation exercise. The current draft has incorporated all recommendations of the review of the evaluation policy commissioned by the Executive Board in 2014 and of the GIU review, the latter shaping the current governance arrangements and the independence and impartiality safeguards of the evaluation function. Overall, the timing of the revision created a great opportunity for the organization to redesign evaluations in alignment with the new development agenda. Never a bad idea to put in sync the evaluand and the evaluated content with the evaluation methodologies, norms, principles, and institutions, for which close progress, monitoring, and high-quality evidence are prerequisites for sustainable results. We are confident that By adopting the policy, the board will give UNDP the necessary instrument to professionalize further the evaluation function and strengthen accountability and effectiveness across the organization. The policy places strong emphasis on organizational learning and on strengthening evaluation capacities of both UNDP and of national institutions we serve to optimize planning and use of resources and maximize results. The policy also defines clear roles for advisory and quality assurance support at headquarters and regional levels and introduces a quality assessment system to improve relevance and utility of evaluation. Perhaps the star of the policy are the financial benchmarks, which were also introduced as an expression of commitment to adequately funding the function to strengthen quality and utility of evaluations of all types. The allocation of 1% of the program funding set as a minimum with a 0.2% for the Independent Evaluation Office is significantly higher than what is spent today for both independent and decentralized evaluations. Aiming to address as early as possible a series of shortcomings in managing evaluations that the review of the evaluation policy had identified, we launched in 2015 a number of measures to improve the performance of the decentralized evaluation function in parallel with the discussion of the draft policy. These measures are an integral part of the effective RBM system that the organization built over this strategic plan cycle, including, very importantly, the adoption of the monitoring policy and introduction of staffing benchmarks for M&E functions and country office level, i.e. 2 full-time staff for programs over $50 million and 1 full-time staff for programs over 10 million but less than 50. Distinct planning and budgeting of monitoring and evaluation functions in programs and projects and in results reporting have also followed. In conclusion, we believe that the current version of the evaluation policy strongly safeguards the independence of the evaluation office with the proposed 1 non-renewable term of the director and the oversight function to be performed by the expanded Audit Advisory Committee set to include 2 evaluation experts. The policy also clarifies quality assessment and assurance function and division of roles between UNDP and the IAO, including on management responsibilities over the evaluation structure. Ultimately, the formulation exercise of this new evaluation policy was a great learning opportunity, a great debate opportunity, and a necessary effort of institutional adjustment to keep accountability high and meet expectations that our top transparency performance for 2 years in a row is continued with hopefully top evaluatory performance. Your endorsement of the evaluation policy, which management seeks with kind request in this session, will allow us to complete key actions set out in the management response to the review of the evaluation policy and to timely honour all relevant commitments on accountability, transparency and responsiveness to your guidance and instructions. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much, Mr. Martinez-Soliman, Assistant Administrator and Director, Bureau for Policy and Programme Support, for your introductory remarks. And now, ladies and gentlemen, I will have the distinct pleasure of giving the floor to Mr. Indran Naidu, Director, Independent Evaluation Office, to introduce the UNDP evaluation policy and to set, the tone, to give the report which opens the gates for our, I am sure, interactive, engaging dialogue with the office and with the management in discussing the report. And once again, I would want to say, to express my absolute satisfaction and commend the office and the management for the excellent cooperation and for the way in which we have arrived at this point to discuss the independent evaluation policy prepared by the office. And with these remarks, Mr. Naidu, the floor is yours, and I invite you to present the report. Thank you very much.
Distinguished members of the board and colleagues, before discussing key aspects of the new UNDP evaluation policy, I want to take this opportunity to thank you, sir, the board president, for your excellent leadership this year and offer my deep appreciation for your active engagement in bringing this policy process to completion. As custodian of the UNDP evaluation policy, the Executive Board periodically requests, reviews, and facilitates revisions to the policy. Most recently, in 2013, the Executive Board asked that the policy be reviewed, and in January 2014, you received the results of an independent review. The document that is being tabled at this session for adoption has been crafted through a series of iterations over the past 2 years, and I believe addresses key evaluation principles and issues of concern to the board. It aligns to international best evaluation practice and sets new standards for the function across the entire organization. The revised policy clarifies the roles and responsibilities of the Independent Evaluation Office, the IEO, and UNDP management. The policy is founded on the premise that independent evaluation plays a particular and crucial role in informing the decision-making at UNDP and by the board. However, the policy also covers the conduct of evaluations carried out under commission of UNDP program and policy units, and by UN volunteers and the UN CDF. The policy caters to the multiple levels and kinds of evaluation needed by UNDP, enabling both independent and decentralized, accountability-based and learning-oriented, which all lead towards a common goal of buttressing UNDP's effectiveness as a global development partner. The policy sets out specific expectations on procedures, stipulates that evaluation needs to be properly resourced, quality assured, independently assessed, and should receive management responses. This policy has benefited from reference to and adherence to the norms and standards of the UN Evaluation Group, or UNEG, the professional network of evaluation heads of 44 UN agencies, which was adopted this April in Geneva at its annual meeting. These norms and standards were reviewed after 11 years. It also responds to the recommendations of the UN Joint Inspection Unit in 2015 on how UN agencies should strengthen their evaluation systems. Also, the new policy better positions UNDP to respond to calls from UN member states to strengthen national evaluation capacities as per GA Resolution 69/237, which is especially timely as nations move to implement the Sustainable Development Goals. Notably, for the first time, the UNDP has established financial benchmarks for evaluation through this policy. 1% of core and non-core resources are to be set aside for the evaluation function, within which 0.2% is for the work of the IEO. Crucially, the policy marks a significant shift for UNDP in terms of governance and harmonizes the UNDP oversight functions under one umbrella, the newly established and expanded Audit and Evaluation Advisory Committee, the AEAC, which comprises arrangements for the Offices of Audit and Investigations, Ethics, and IEO. At the same time, the IEO reports directly to and is accountable to the board, to whom it presents its reports and its costed program of work. This policy reinforces IEO operational independence, with HR and administrative powers delegated to the director within UNDP rules and procedures. All evaluation reports produced by the IEO, as well as their terms of reference, are made publicly available, as are the management responses, which are included now in every evaluation report. Reports are finalized and released by the director without external pressure. These provisions clearly establish the operational independence of the unit and supports its credibility, which is needed as it engages with stakeholders across the globe. To further entrench independence, and in line with international practice and the JIU recommendations, the policy provides for a single, non-renewable term for the IEO director, thus greatly reducing the complications that can arise through renewal procedures. In addition, the director appointment is subject to consultation with the board as well as with the advice from the AEAC. The the AEAC can also recommend dismissal based on its mandate to appraise the work of the IEO director. The IEO manages an evaluation resource center where all UNDP evaluations are accessible to the public. It has a specific role in capacity building and supporting UNDP in improving the credibility of its decentralized evaluations through both support and assessment. As we move forward after adoption of this new policy, the IEO on its part is committed to servicing the board with an expanded range and quality of reporting. We have begun planning our work in reference to future sessions of the board. In the next annual report from IEO, which will be presented for your consideration at the June session next year, we will propose a schedule of work for the next medium-term evaluation plan, covering the next UNDP strategic plan. Speaking to expectations expressed by the board, we will also initiate a series of periodic reports that address systemic aspects of the independent evaluation function. These include a synthesis of thematic and regional level findings from country level evaluations, which were presented to you earlier today. More extensive assessment of decentralized evaluation quality, contributions to national evaluation capacities, and analysis of the implementation of recommendations from prior independent evaluations. Distinguished members of the board, UNDP has produced a clear, concise, and ambitious policy that we urge you to support. It optimizes the role of evaluation at UNDP and will help to strengthen UNDP programming and service delivery as a result. Adoption of the revised evaluation policy will be important for evaluation at UNDP and clearly demonstrate the commitment of its governing body, the Executive Board, and UNDP management to the use of evaluation as one of the pillars of organizational learning and accountability. I thank all of you for the various inputs we've received which has crafted this policy. I wish to thank you for your attention and engagement on this important issue. Thank you.
I thank you very much, Mr. Naidu, for your presentation, which sets the tone for the engagement of the delegations into the questions and comments session. And at this point, ladies and gentlemen, I will now, in order for me to attend to some other business of the board, I'm really grateful to my colleague, the Vice President, the Ambassador of Belgium, to take over from me at this point to continue to preside over this session. And he will be taking over from me, and I thank you very much.
Good morning, everybody. I now open the floor for questions or comments, and I have, as of now, 2 speakers on the list, Norway and Switzerland. The distinguished delegate of Norway has the floor.
Thank you, President. I'm making this statement on behalf of Sweden and my own country, Norway. Let me start by thanking the UNDP and the Independent Evaluation Office for the interesting introduction of the new evaluation policy. President, effective results management has been a key element in UNDP's pursuit of the present strategic plan, as well as the accompanying structural changes. There is agreement that the robust evaluation function is an important tool to improve results. This requires sufficient resources, both money and competent people, but not least a clear definition of responsibilities and guidelines for how evaluation should be undertaken and utilized. In this regard, we are very encouraged by the clear and comprehensive policy document in front of us. We appreciate that the policy is strongly rooted in the United Nations Evaluation Group's norms and standards and the interrelated principles of impartiality, credibility, and utility. The policy has our full support. President, in the past, we have in the board talked much about the need for UNDP to strengthen its evaluation culture. Some critics have indicated that within the organization there is only limited appreciation for the benefits of the evaluation function. On the other hand, credible observers, including the JIU, have pointed out that UNDP is ahead of other UN organizations in several areas of its evaluation function. We know that UNDP has a strong base of competent staff to build on. The updated policy should be used to further nurture an organizational culture of learning, transparency, and encourage all staff to equally appreciate positive and negative evaluation findings. We appreciate how UNDP has underscored the importance of preparing the next strategic plan with guidance from independent evaluations. President, without sufficient resources for all elements of the evaluation function, it will be difficult to achieve this more ambitious approach on evaluation. In its resource allocations, UNDP must therefore give this high priority. In this regard, we welcome that the new policy clearly defines the necessary levels of funding, both for the evaluation function as a whole and the requirements of the Independent Evaluation Office. President, last year we were left disappointed after becoming aware of the numerous weaknesses of the decentralized evaluation function that were identified in the external assessment. We then expressed concern for how this deprives the organizations of the evidence necessary to make sound decisions on resource allocation and programming, how it limits the access of donors to information needed to justify their investments of scarce resources. It leaves program country governments and people with limited knowledge on whether and how UNDP programs have contributed towards their development needs. Since then, we have learned about the steps taken by UNDP to improve this situation. We now expect that the new evaluation policy will create even more momentum in UNDP's actions to strengthen the quality and utility of decentralized evaluations. In this regard, it would be useful if UNDP at the next board meeting could give us an update on these efforts. President, I will also make a brief comment on the response to the recommendations on the evaluation of the UNDP contributions to poverty reduction. Rather than a narrow focus on evaluation culture, it may be better to aspire for a robust learning culture. We consider this one of the most important messages in the evaluation of UNDP's contribution to poverty reduction that was presented to the board in 2013. We appreciate the way UNDP has answered the request by the board for an update on how it has followed up on the recommendations in the report. This is in itself an example of best practice, the way the board and UNDP have this type of dialogue on responses to evaluation findings. It is a clear ambition of the Sustainable Development Goals to leave no one behind. The update in front of us helps us understand how UNDP advances its contribution to alleviate poverty and reduce inequalities. It has been encouraging to learn how the present strategic plan in fact represents a comprehensive response to the recommendations in the evaluation. We encourage UNDP to continue using the findings of the evaluation report from 2013 as a reference also when preparing the next strategic plan. Thank you, President.
I thank the distinguished delegate from Norway. The
distinguished delegate from Switzerland has the floor.
I make this statement on behalf of Australia, Belgium, Canada, Finland, France, Germany, Italy, Japan, the Netherlands, New Zealand, the United Kingdom, the United States, and my country, Switzerland. We wish to thank the UNDP Administrator, Madam Clark, and the Independent Evaluation Office for the revision of the UNDP evaluation policy and welcome the new version presented to the Board for decision.
It was a long process with its ups and downs, but we believe that the quality of the policy has improved throughout the process. We appreciate that after constructive and open-minded discussions, many of the suggestions voiced during the informals were taken into consideration. In particular, we value the following 3 modifications. First, the resource allocation targets. First, the new evaluation policy sets clear targets for the evaluation budget. At the overall organizational level, UNDP will aim at allocating 1% of combined programmatic core and non-core resources to the evaluation function. No less than 0.2% is reserved for the work of the Independent Evaluation Office. We strongly believe that such a target is an important element to further strengthen UNDP's evaluation function and to protect it in times of resources fluctuations. In order to ensure that UNDP stays a learning institution in a highly dynamic development context, we should continue discussions on more ambitious budget allocation targets in the future. Second, with regard to management response. With the new evaluation policy, the management is requested to report annually to the Executive Board on their management responses and action taken. The Independent Evaluation Office analyzes these management responses each year, including through spot checking. It is our firm belief that the systematic and thorough implementation of management actions recommended by evaluations is the key element to ensure that evaluation findings lead to learning and ultimately to better results on the ground. The Audit and Evaluation Advisory Committee plays a very important role in advising both the administrator and the board on the state of UNDP evaluations. We look forward to engaging with the AEAC in future board sessions. This brings me to my third point, the independent system-wide evaluations. The new policy lists that the work of the Independent Evaluation Office includes supporting the harmonization of the evaluation function in the United Nations system and refers to the participation in system-wide evaluations. Independent system-wide evaluations are of utmost importance to measuring performance across agencies on achieving common objectives. As the 2030 Agenda requires a collective effort of the whole UN family to address the interdependence of the 17 SDGs in an effective manner, independent system-wide evaluations will be more important than ever. This calls foremost for enhanced coordination and cooperation among agencies and their evaluation functions, exploring new funding opportunities for independent system-wide evaluations, less duplication, leading to potential saving, and for proper institutionalization of the ESRI mechanism. The upcoming QCPR offers an ideal opportunity to tackle these issues. Finally, we hope that the focus can now shift toward the implementation of the policy. We encourage UNDP to ensure sound implementation of the evaluation policy's principles and practices across the suite of UNDP's work. It is highly important that the decentralized evaluation function of UNDP is operating soundly and supports learning, accountability, and high-performing programs. We remain committed partners for supporting UNDP in its continued efforts for evidence-based programming. Supporting UNDP's evaluation function is and will remain a priority in the future for us. Thank you very much.
I thank the distinguished delegate of Switzerland, and I now give the floor to the Secretariat for a response. I don't know who wants to start.
Would you want?
Nobody? Please.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. I'll make a very, very short remark because what the distinguished delegates who have taken the floor have said not only resonates but has been the tone and the backdrop against which I believe the Independent Evaluation Office has developed the draft policy. But let me then coincide with more emphasis. As the distinguished delegate of Norway on behalf of his country and Sweden has said, we are committed to effective results management. If it only were because resources are not precisely booming and we need to make impact happen with the resources that you entrust us, and therefore greater impact is absolutely fundamental. I also agree with the point that we need to strengthen evaluation culture inside of the organization. And I think that strengthening evaluation quality, inter alia by allocating further funding to the evaluation function, will go a long ways in strengthening the evaluation culture. I will address the issue, after consulting with the President and the Secretariat to the Board, the issue of the poverty evaluation later this morning. The distinguished delegate of Switzerland has made again a point that we have sustained all along. Financial autonomy has a lot to do with functional independence, and that is why the benchmarks and the guarantees of funding are important. We do commit, and I conclude with that, to a sound, full and unrestricted implementation of this policy should you wish to approve it today. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Yes, please, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Mr. Solomon. Just to reiterate, the comments resonate with what we have been stating, to thank the delegations for their support and thank all members for their ongoing inputs, which we have tried to accommodate. We do believe we have an excellent evaluation policy that sets a new standard for not only the UN system but also internationally, and I say this wearing the other hat as the UNEC Vice Chair. We are now in the process of implementation and we really wish to move on with the work. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Now I wish to inform the board that a draft decision has been prepared. It was under a silent procedure, and I'm told that this silence procedure has not been broken. Therefore, this draft decision is ready to be signed at the conclusion of the consideration of this item.